We've talked a lot about this today, guys, and the ideas of seed certification, and there are some absolutely genius minds in the space up here besides Rick. I'll let them all introduce themselves, but this is an important topic. Again, it's going to be a likely mandate coming down the road from the USDA. We all have different roles in that. Rick, Terry, myself. I am working with AOSCA, who Rick is also working with, and trying to put our foot down or put our arms around a certified genetic program, even a possibility for FEM seed certification through AOSCA. The USDA really wants to see that. They've been pressured with it. We don't know if we can do it. There's a lot of issues with cannabis, morphological traits, etc., that come on down the line with once you get into genetic work. And hey, you guys, lots of good stuff. So I'm a plant breeder. There's a lot of other you guys out here who are cannabis breeders. So this will be a really good panel for us. Let's do a quick introduction. Here, you guys, you go first.
All right, I'm back again. Tanner Willis with Colorado Hemp Solutions. I'm a farmer here on the Western Slope. We did about 600 acres this year total in the ground on more of the high cannabinoid boutique side.
Hey, what's up? I'm Tate Dooley, owner and CEO of Key 2 Life out of Denver, Colorado. Personally farming over 1,000 acres. Some of my farmer partners are here in the room. We kind of see the genetics board from all sides of the seed. So,
Rick Novak again. And let me tell you that we're industrial hemp, where I see it from a seed certification, from a national perspective. It really is at the stage where oats, barley, and wheat were in about 1910, okay? 1910, that means that the industry hasn't evolved. If you look at the transition, what's happened with corn over the last 100 years, all of these different crops go through modifications, and I think that's where we're at. So we're in for a very bright, a very good future, but right now it's kind of infantile. So if you ask questions and everybody doesn't have an answer,
a lot of change coming here. Absolutely. Terry,
can you hear me okay? Terry Moran, I'm working with Bija Hemp, and we have the Polish Institute's varieties of certified seed. So my background is plant breeding, vegetable seed industry mainly, and I did spend 3 years at the Department of Ag as the industrial hemp certified seed specialist, so you might talk to me on the phone from those days.
so you guys, let's start there. Terry, if you wouldn't mind, talk about what you started at the Department of Agriculture with the THC certification program and why that was instrumental leading to seed certification.
Sure. Well, I think Rick has a whole, it sounds like it's just echoing like really loud, so let me know if it's just static. But so the Department of Ag was charged with, creating a certified seed program. It was in the Amendment 64. It was after that, established the Hemp Act. The Hemp Act said they were going to mandate a certified seed program as part of it. And so I basically was hired in that role. It was the first time, it was a brand new position. And the Department of Ag was basically just trying to wrap their arms around what is this new crop. And so I came into that, kind of be the scientist guy inside, along with the regulatory people. But since it was such a small program, you got involved with everything, basically on the regulatory side. And the certified seed, basically, when you look at regulation, they look at kind of blanket regulation because you don't write rules for just one or two outlier things. You have to make it something that works and is easy. And in this environment where Colorado, where you were basically, everybody was allowed to do anything they wanted to do. A lot of other states had certified seed mandates from day one. So like this whole Colorado industry wouldn't even have happened at all had Colorado said certified seed only day one. So they've kind of let this go, and now they're moving into a different direction. So my role basically was anyone that wanted to sell seed in Colorado, it had to go through a trialing program to say, yes, this is certified seed by legal definition. Other states brought in seed, gave it to growers. either didn't test it or started testing it a couple years later and found out they had localized problems. Of course, when we're talking about localized problems, a lot of the stuff is like 0.6 to not even 1% THC, but legal definition is 0.3. So, from our side, working with Rick hand in hand, Rick said, hey, everybody wants their variety in this program, and nobody really has a variety. Everybody and their brother's a backyard cannabis breeder in Colorado, and and small population size. Look what's happened on the high THC side with very small indoor populations. So, I don't really just scoff at all that, because there's certainly a lot of incremental gains since the 60s and 70s in that arena. It's a little harder to do with open pollinated crops and making, coming back to one cross, one plant, blowing it up from, tracking it back just like you would an inbred ear of corn or one head of a wheat variety that becomes hundreds of thousands of acres tracing back to a single head. So I'm getting off topic here, but so the regulatory program had, describe your variety, prove that you can sell it, maintain it, has to have official tags on it from the department when you sell it, and it has to go through the trialing process. So I was basically the trial guy. I got to run around the state, 5 locations every 2-3 weeks from May until October. So I was the outside guy running all over the state, having lots of fun. So
Thanks, Jay. So let's digress a bit from the certification program and look into the genetics. What is it you guys are looking for when you're creating your seed line, your genetic line? What kind of stuff are you looking for along the way?
Well, currently I'm looking for two forms of stability. First off is THC to CBD ratios in line with Terry's previous seed program that he worked with. We are a Colorado seed register. Yeah, definitely. There's some feedback on it. And then the second would be male to female stability. Everybody's wanted to see that stability of a feminized variety right now. So we like to look at this as there is a play for male and female grain producing varieties in certain areas with certain permission, checked with all of their neighbors and being considerate with all their neighbors. And then there's also going to be meccas of high CBD Sensimelia seedless female hemp as well. And so we all need to be respectful of our end goal, right? We're all farmers. Farming in general is your end goal. We got to work backwards from our end goal, and our end goal is going to determine our fertilization, our planting, our irrigation, our standard operating procedures, our cultivation methods, our, God forbid, pesticide protocol. A lot of these different things come into play when we step up into big ag, and I feel personally that in big ag, it's all headed toward a tri-crop style of farming where you're going to have seed, stem, and as well as CBD. Now, obviously, there's other areas of farming, 500 acres or less, that is going to be all female. So I think that there's a little bit of a play for everybody here. And going back to your question, sorry, I'm digressing, is stability of THC to CBD ratios, but also stability of male to female ratios for your end goal on the seed that you're buying. One main thing that I wanted to tell all of you guys as farmers is watch out. Number one, first and foremost, with the seed that you buy, whether you buy it from anybody, including myself, I'm holding myself to a double standard here. Double check anybody, their paperwork, call the labs, re-verify the COAs, even go buy a small amount of the seed, take it to lab, have it tested yourself, even grow the seed out a previous year. So if you're looking to be farming for next year as well, maybe go and pheno hunt a couple of the genetics or geno hunt a couple of the genetics from some of the breeders that you want to work with now. Get those into the labs, get those into your fields, see how they respond to your environment, your soil type, your grower profile, your standard operating procedures, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to make or break you.
But it's important to remember on that, a certification process is coming into play. So, you guys all have to take that into play. Whether we want to or not, you are going to be held to the 0.3% through the USDA in any kind of application. So it makes it a tough breeding process, but you have to understand the regulatory framework is going to largely dictate your breeding scheme. Sir?
Is that certification going to come through that Champ group that's being put together starting next week?
Gentleman asked if the certification was going to go through the CHAMPS program, the Colorado Hemp Agricultural Management Plan. No, sir, that actually is run through RIC, Colorado State University, Colorado State Seed Growers Association, and associated with the CSU Seed Lab. So he does all the certification in the state.
And Colorado, the Seed Growers Association was designated by the legislature in Colorado in 1929, and it still stays the same as the official seed certification organization representing the state. So nobody else does it but our office. Now, going back when we're talking about certification, so we're currently doing seed certification inspection of plants that are producing seed. We have talked at our national level, which we had our national meetings in the end of June, that there's a very high demand for feminized seed, a certification program for that, and also clonal production. So we are looking at that. My peers in other states and other agencies are very picky. Well, there's an A word that kind of sums it up, but they're pretty picky on all of the little details. So we can't come to a conclusion in 2019 because there's too many details that are not discovered yet. So we feel, or I feel, and I told our president that we may have to incorporate some type of genetic testing. But I think it's the perfect application because seed certification is verification. It's verification for the consumer, and it's used in a lot of crops, and it works very well because it creates a trustworthy line of purchase. It's not perfect, but it is as best that we have.
Is anyone doing anything for gene identification in cannabis? Are you guys doing anything like that? Anyone?
I'm personally, I know we both are, so I'll answer and then I'll let Tanner answer. I'm actually sending all the genetics that I'm working with to DNA extraction genetic testing to determine homozygosity percentages. And obviously we're looking for true to type plants that are over 90 to 95% homozygosity. So.
We're starting to work into that realm. There's a couple of agencies that we've been talking with, trying to further the conversation and take it a little more. But with some of the stuff you were talking about, specific spots we breed for going into like the boutique market, we look for structure. So if you're going for Christmas tree style, or if you're going for growing like corn, we look for breeding structure, how those plants grow, and then terpene profile. So there's other markets as well that you can get into as far as in the smokable side. People want stuff that tastes like fruit, stuff that tastes like lemons, things like that. So the breeding spot, we also breed for increasing those traits and working on those.
Sir, you had a question.
If I could I jump in here?
Sure.
Just to kind of finish up with that. You ask if this is coming from the CHAMP thing. That's going to come from the United States Department of Agriculture. The USDA will more than likely probably mandate certified seed. And at the same time, they'll probably look at, can we do a feminized seed? Can we do a certified clone program? And I can tell you it's a regulatory nightmare. And I've penciled it through that myself a few times. And I mean, there's just so many ways to beat the system that I don't really know if that's going to be a reality. Biologically, sure. But there's people that are doing it, that are going to push for it on a large level, and maybe they'll come up with something that works from the regulatory side. But I don't think you're going to see a certified clone program unless you have a barcode on every plant, and on and on with the lots on the feminized seed. There's just too many ways to beat it.
Technology.
Yep. Talk about, you got something else on breeding over here. Let's talk about that real quick.
So also I see the breeding ecoscape changing pretty drastically, and people are going to start looking for traits that you see in corn seed, soy seed. They're, God forbid, I am a 100% organic guy, and yes, I don't like Monsanto, and I'll say it right here in front of everybody. But, we are going to start and see genetics that are bred for emergence, for lay down in the field, so you can do windrowing outside with less CBD loss. We're going to start seeing genetics that are bred for weed resiliency. The avenues that we take to reach these end goals is up to us at this current date in this community to determine that we don't make the same mistakes of previous agriculture. So while these are valid end goals for us as farmers to look for out of our seed crops, we also have to be mindful of the practices and not rewrite unnecessary evils from previous breeding practices in big ag.
Did you have a question, sir? Really good
Well,
answer.
The last thing is just qualifying the difference between certified seed and qualified seed, where right now you can pay to have a purity test, a male to female ratio, and propagation rate.
Sure. Unfortunately, those don't play anything into the certification process. The certification is like we said over here. These gentlemen have said, it's essentially a bag tag that says the exact germination. It's true to type. You're not really looking at those kind of things on the seed certification side. Rick, is that generally correct?
Yes. So that's why our organization is a member organization, and there's a certain amount of ethics that come into play in our organization. So our membership, our board of directors can kick out somebody that's doing something unethical, and that's what your question is between quality and certified. Maybe the ethics, is that right?
Well, I've been told there's no such thing as a certified feminized seed at
No.
this point.
No, there is not.
And do
No.
you foresee that by 2020?
No, not by 2020. Maybe 2021, 22. It is possible, Terry is right. It's a regulatory or trying to maintain the documentation like we do. We do it from a tracing and trackability and ethics of people in the seed industry. Ethics is huge, okay? So we do that from that. When it comes to feminized or doing clones, technology will have to be involved so you can verify. And there's an additional cost, which makes it expensive. So the talk is like, yes, it's possible, but I don't think it'll be affordable. And that's kind of the issue that we run into. If we do something from a national level, it has to work in Colorado, has to work in California, has to work in Oregon, has to work in every other state. I have a group coming from 12 different states that I will be doing a tour showing what we do with hemp in Colorado for people from these 12 other states that now have hemp growing there, and they're not comfortable, they don't know what to do, and so we're educating and teaching them of what this crop is and how to treat it. And so I think that's huge for a lot of people is the monitoring and the consistency and the regulation and reliability of buying feminized seed and cloned. There are some unscrupulous people, as somebody said earlier, and we've run into that from our perspective from the seed lab. We had somebody forge documents that sold seed to Delaware, went into Delaware, and so it goes on. They'll forge the document, they'll sell the seed, but they got caught.
Do you mind if I go off on that real quick?
No.
So in June, my company sold out of feminized seed for the 6th time of this year. I searched the entire United States for a 7th reliable source for feminized seed, and I interviewed 40 seed sources. 2 were real. 35 of them gave me fraudulent paperwork, tried to lie, cheat, and steal and take my money. So that's why I said the whole buyer beware for the farmer thing earlier. Just want to throw it out there.
And hence the need for certification programs around certified seed. Yes, Nishami, you had a question? I'm sorry, sir, right next.
So to protect our seeds,
Yes.
do we need legislation at the state levels to prevent the GMO nonsense?
So Nishama just asked about protection of genetics from like Monsanto, the GMO, and all those kind of applications on the state level. It'll likely be mandated to different fashions as far as production measures, right? If you're producing for an ingestible and stuff like that. You know, Neshama, unfortunately, I don't see when big agriculture comes in and is using, growing cannabis for a bio lubricant of some kind. Like I said before, they're going to find the cheapest way to farm that, and a lot of it is chemical farming, and it's not going into us, but it is, right? Still goes into us in a cyclical environment, which is horrible. But I don't think we're going to get that. I'm going to do everything I can here in the state of Colorado on the food side to produce that, but I already get pushback from different lobbyists on the large ag side who want this piece of their pie. So
There is one point that I'd like to add here. There is a system that's tied to part of the reason for seed certification that it's successful over the past 50 years has been plant variety protection. So that's something that is available now, but USDA doesn't know quite how to deal with it yet. That you can, if your variety is accepted into seed certification, you can get U.S. plant variety protection for of course, a fee. So you pay the fee, your application is accepted, and you have 20 years of patent-like protection of infringement. So you have to explain on your application how it's going to be marketed, who's going to be maintained, and how it's going to be licensed, marketed, and sold. So that's a great thing. That's a great thing that's coming. It isn't quite digested by USDA yet, but that's coming. Okay? So taking into account that I hear people talking about Roundup and this and that, I can tell you that because I used to work for a large company, not that one, but one like it, that there's not enough money, there's not enough millions of acres in it, so I wouldn't be too concerned because they're going to have to invest in that. And in invest in that, it's like, why do you think there is not GMO wheat? Because there isn't enough acres, there isn't enough money, and it doesn't work that way. So it's all about the money for the big company, and there isn't enough money in that, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
The one thing that I wanted to add for you, Nishara, is this world, and especially this industry, is all about IP. So if you have something special that you've created, whether it's a genetic or a product or extraction or whatever it is, guard it and take the right steps to protect it before you release it into the eco space.
Sir, let's get some questions going, guys. Sir, please.
You are correct. We are somewhat of a fluid. We're oh, there we go. Shoot. We're really, our organization is member driven. We are housed at CSU. We are self-funded. So we have resources that we use as far as contract inspectors. And so if there's an insurgence and a need, we're doing the increasing with that. We did that. My time allocation with hemp is like taking a lot of the time away from other things, but I'm making it work. So we are making that work. And I wanted to point at something else, but I lost my train of thought about plant variety protection, but I don't remember what it was. But that's something that's going to be a real advantage in the future for you.
You guys, any other questions? We're wrapping up on half an hour. Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question. You touched earlier on you guys looking for stable genetics, but maybe you can just I got some good things. I'm also on the hunt for more stable genetics. Even though I got my plants from a reputable seed source, I'm still seeing a wide variety of phenotypes. Like how many generations interbreeding would you expect until we really start to see stable, consistent phenotypes?
So this gentleman was asking, how long in general can you go from acclimatizing a varietal and to lowering your phenotypical variety expressions in your field, which means how long does it take to get it, like Rick said, true to type? where you're not seeing phenotypical expressions in the field. You know, you're not seeing one plant that's a tall sativa-like and maybe one that's a little bushy. In my experience, that usually takes 6 to 8 generations of successive breeding as to where you're moving genetic markers to that homozygous side of things. So you're moving them to those stable side. Terry, you got anything on that?
I mean, plant breeding is plant breeding. It all comes down to how good of a job you're doing. And I mean, if you were using, you know, marker-assisted breeding or doing back cross techniques and all that, I mean, if you're tracing back to say a single plant, you make a cross, you take one plant, and you're making sid pollinations. But if you just have it open pollinated, you're not protecting your crosses, you know, you could breed forever and never get any homozygosity. I mean, it's always going to be a soup. But if you control your pollination, you know, 6 to 8 is going to start getting you somewhere. But I mean, cannabis is kind of a rogue crop anyway. But as far as the certified seed thing, there's plenty of certified seed available now for everybody. It's just that if you want something that's going to be legally 0.3 and 30% CBD or even 20% CBD, you're not going to get it. If you want something that's legal 0.3 and 6 to 8, you'll probably find lots of that real soon.
Question. Sorry.
You guys are talking about crops in the field and stuff. Big problem here, especially on different crops. If you're trying to be isolated,
Seed crops just need to be isolated. After that, you don't have to be isolated, you know. No, just the seed crop.
Just seed development. So if you're a grain producer, row cropping, you know, you're throwing hemp. Yeah, you know, you're throwing pollen in relative to wherever, you know, additional hemp fields are. Now, as Terry said, production seed for multiplication is usually done in sectors where there's a required distance for certification, etc.
And I'll point out, that's not a lot different than if you look at canola seed production.
Exactly.
If you look at corn seed, alfalfa seed production, isolation is really key. Maintaining a genetics, and pollen isn't consistently flow. It tapers off the further away you get. So that's one of the issues that when we talked about at Ayahuasca meetings about greenhouse production inspections and certifications is, how do we measure the pollen? How do we screen the pollen? How do we determine filter size for pollen, air quality, that stuff?
Yeah, pollen wars are going to be big in the cannabis space. You know, in Pueblo, Colorado, where you have mandated only female growing because of the large marijuana growth, some of the largest, well, the largest in the country. And just west of there, you know, you have some guys who are farming grain crops. You're seeing pollen drift and incorporate into marijuana fields now. So the pollen wars are real. They're going to be happening over the place, but hopefully smart regulations that lead to, you know, smart system management over time will alleviate some of that. Last questions, yes, sir.
How far of a buffer do you generally need to be not so worried about?
So certified seed requires 6/10, Rick, I believe.
It's 16,000 feet. And I'll point out what can happen at the state level. Currently in the state of Washington, you can grow industrial hemp. If you want to grow it for seed and seed certification, they imposed the rule of 15 miles, which is that's different than 16,000 feet that we as a seed certification agencies for our higher levels of parent seed require. When it gets down to the certified level, which is the third tier down, we're at 3,000 feet, I believe it is. So it's significantly less.
Any other questions in the audience? You guys got some good folks here. If not, find them afterwards. You guys, thanks very much. Great genetics panel. Like